What's up, everyone, and welcome to NFL Nexus. Today, we are diving headfirst into the absolute mess that is the Indianapolis Colts, a franchise staring down a decision that is going to change everything for them. We're heading into the 2026 offseason, and it's coming on the heels of a season that didn't just end, it completely fell apart. After a year that started with so much promise, the Colts are now left picking up the pieces, trying to figure out what comes next, with a quarterback dilemma that will, for better or for worse, define the next decade of football in Indy. A mountainous fall from grace. That's the phrase that's been used to describe the end of the Colts' 2025 season, and honestly, it's the perfect way to put it. This really captures the scale of the collapse we all witnessed. This wasn't just a little stumble or a team running out of gas at the finish line. No. This was a team in an absolute freefall, tumbling from a surefire playoff spot to total, complete irrelevance in just a few weeks. And right at the center of it all is this massive, complicated question about the single most important position on the field. So, okay, let's really set the stage here. For the first 10 games of the 2025 season, the Colts looked legit. I mean, they looked like a real force to be reckoned with. The offense was clicking, the defense was making plays, they were right there in the thick of the playoff hunt. But then, it's like the wheels didn't just come off, they were violently ripped from the car. The team ended the year on a brutal, just soul-crushing 7-game losing streak. Now, a skid like that isn't just a bad stretch. It forces a team to do a full-on autopsy on itself, questioning everything from its core identity to its leadership, and yeah, especially its future at quarterback. And that, right there, leads us directly to the heart of the problem. So let's kick off part one of our explainer, the Anthony Richardson project. You gotta remember, when the Colts drafted him 4th overall back in 2023, they knew they were swinging for the fences. They were betting the entire farm on this kid's incredible, almost unbelievable athletic talent. But here we are, 3 years down the road, and that high-risk gamble is looking more and more like a franchise-crippling mistake. The key phrase here, the one you have to understand, is Project Quarterback. Now, this wasn't some label that got slapped on him later. Everybody in the league, every analyst, every fan knew this is what he was on draft day. He had this rare, almost video game-like combination of size, speed, and arm strength. But, and believe me, this is a massive but, he was also incredibly raw. So the Colts weren't just drafting a football player, they were starting a multi-year construction project. And they stake their entire future on their ability to mold this raw clay into a polished, consistent NFL starting quarterback. Let's really break down the risks that were staring them in the face when they made that pick. I mean, drafting anyone at number 4 overall is a huge deal, but to use it on a quarterback with these red flags, that was a historic roll of the dice. First off, only 13 career starts in college. That is a shockingly small amount of experience to go on when you're projecting a guy to play the single hardest position in all of pro sports. And then you've got the 53.8% completion percentage at Florida. Now, to put that in perspective, most top QB prospects, they're sitting comfortably in the mid to high 60s. A number that low just screams that there are fundamental problems with mechanics, with footwork, with accuracy. The one thing you couldn't deny? His elite rushing ability. The guy was a cheat code on the ground. The Colts basically bet that his athleticism was so special, so game-breaking that they could just coach up everything else. That was the gamble. And here is exactly how that bet has played out so far. It started with this electrifying flash of potential back in 2023. I mean, for his first 4 games, you saw the vision. The athleticism was everything they said it was, and more. But then, boom, the first major setback. A season-ending shoulder injury that cost him crucial time to learn and develop. The hope was, okay, he'll come back bigger and better in 2024. But that season was a complete and total nightmare. It was just this agonizing cycle of injuries mixed with profoundly bad play whenever he was on the field. And all of that led to 2025, where he couldn't even win the starting job, losing out to veteran Daniel Jones before, you guessed it, another season-ending injury, this time an orbital bone fracture. It's just been a career defined by the trainer's room and inconsistency. But you know, that little flash of promise in his rookie year, man, it was so tantalizing. This number right here, 59.5%, that was his completion percentage through those first 4 games. Was it elite? No, of course not. But it was a huge step up from his college numbers. And even more importantly, he had 4 rushing touchdowns in just 4 games. He looked like a dynamic, unstoppable weapon. This brief glimpse, it was enough to build a mountain of excitement. Fans, the front office, everybody thought, okay, the project is on track, the gamble is about to pay off big time. But all that hope, all that excitement, it didn't just fade away. It basically burst into flames. The 2024 season was, and I'm quoting directly from the source material here, a complete implosion. This wasn't just a sophomore slump, you know? This was a catastrophic failure of development, where pretty much everything that could possibly go wrong did. The accuracy issues from college, they didn't just stick around, they somehow got worse. His decision-making went backwards, and NFL defenses, well, they do what they always do. They adapted, and they exposed every single one of his weaknesses with terrifying speed. Just look at this statistical nosedive. This is the hard evidence of that implosion. His completion percentage, which was already a huge concern at 53.8% in college, plummeted to a truly god-awful 47.7% in 2024. That means he wasn't even completing half of his passes. That is just not sustainable for an NFL quarterback. And the touchdown-to-interception ratio, it completely flipped on its head, from a positive 17-9 in his last year in college to a disastrous 8-12 in the NFL. And on top of all that, he put the ball on the turf a whopping 9 times. He was a turnover machine, plain and simple, killing drives and losing games for his team. And then there was this. This quote right here might be the single most damning piece of evidence against him. In 2024, during a critical game, he took himself out voluntarily. His reason? He was tired from running. Now, this wasn't an injury timeout, okay? This was a player literally tapping out for a franchise, for a head coach, for his teammates. That raises some profound questions about his focus, his conditioning, and his fundamental desire to compete at the highest level. It's one thing to struggle with the X's and O's. It is a completely different thing to tap out because you're tired. So, you add it all up, the constant injuries, the horrible regression in his stats, and these deep, deep questions about his on-field conduct and his mentality. The conclusion that so many around the league have come to, well, it's pretty much unavoidable. The Anthony Richardson experiment, this massive, franchise-altering bet, has been nothing short of a total dumpster fire. All right, so I know it all sounds incredibly bleak, but this is where the story gets really complicated and, honestly, a lot more interesting. Because while the Richardson project was basically burning to the ground, something else was happening on that very same offense. Other players were starting to thrive. A brand new core started to emerge, offering this surprising little glimmer of hope. We're going to explore that new core right now, and hey, if you're enjoying this deep dive, please do us a huge favor and take a second to subscribe to NFL Nexus and like this video. Your support really does help us keep making these explainers for you. Okay, so the single biggest reason for any optimism at all in Indianapolis right now, it's coming from the most unlikely place you can imagine. Daniel Jones. He was signed in the 2025 offseason, and the thinking was, okay, he's a veteran backup, he can push Richardson a little bit. Nobody expected much. But instead of just pushing him, Jones went out and flat out won the starting job in training camp and then proceeded to have a full-blown career renaissance. And the difference in the offense was immediate. Just look at this number, 68.0%. That was Daniel Jones's completion percentage in 2025 before he got hurt. Now let's just put that side by side for a second with Richardson's 47.7% from the year before. We are talking about a more than 20-point difference in accuracy. Jones was running that offense with a level of efficiency, timing, and control that the Colts just had not seen. He was calm, he made smart decisions, and he got the ball to his playmakers. And his production was fantastic across the board. In less than a full season, and remember, he tore his Achilles in Week 14, he threw for over 3,100 yards and 19 touchdowns. And he wasn't just a pocket passer either. He added another 5 scores on the ground. That is 24 total touchdowns he was responsible for. Before that brutal injury, he was playing the absolute best football of his entire career and looked every bit the legitimate franchise quarterback the Colts have been so desperate to find. But the hope in Indy isn't just riding on the shoulders of one comeback quarterback. While Jones was reviving his career, a new superstar was being born right before our eyes. The Colts used their 14th overall pick in the 2025 draft on a tight end from Penn State named Tyler Warren. And this kid, he didn't just meet expectations, he completely shattered them, immediately taking the entire league by storm. 76. That's the number of catches rookie tight end Tyler Warren had in his very first season. Now, this wasn't just a good number for a rookie. It completely broke the Colts' single-season record for receptions by a first-year player. He instantly became the focal point of that passing attack and the team's most reliable weapon. To have that kind of impact from day one is just unbelievably rare, especially at the tight end position, which is notoriously tough for rookies. And you know, he was so much more than just a receiver. Yeah, he led the team with 817 yards, establishing himself as a true number one option.
but he was also a critical physical blocker in the run game, showing off toughness and technique that you just don't see from rookies. They even used him as a runner, lining him up at fullback, where he actually punched in a touchdown. The source material says he played like a 10-year NFL veteran in his very first season. That is the kind of cornerstone player you build an entire offense around.
And Warren wasn't out there by himself. You've got Josh Downs, the guy whose rookie record Warren broke, who looks ready for a huge bounce-back season. Then there's the veteran leader, Michael Pittman Jr., who's still that dependable WR1 and set a new career high with 7 touchdowns last year. And you can't sleep on Alec Pierce, who finally had that true breakout year, becoming a legitimate deep threat. So what you have is this solid, deep, and versatile group of weapons. The foundation is there. All they need is the right guy throwing them the ball. Which brings all of these clashing stories crashing together. On one side, you have the epic, undeniable, colossal failure of the Anthony Richardson project. And on the other, you have the surprise emergence of Daniel Jones and this promising, well-rounded group of offensive weapons. This all sets up the ultimate dilemma for the Colts front office. They have 2 completely different paths forward, and the one they pick is going to have massive ripple effects for years and years to come. So let's just lay it all out on the table. With Anthony Richardson, you have the massive sunken cost of a number 4 overall pick who, let's be honest, has been a bust. His only real advantage right now is that he's still on that cheap rookie contract. On the other side, you've got Daniel Jones, who was a low-risk signing that resulted in a career revival. He looks like a real answer, but he's now a free agent coming off a torn Achilles. So it's a choice between a failed investment that's cheap and a damaged but promising asset that's going to cost you. And just when you think it can't get any more complicated, of course, it's about the money too. Committing to re-signing Daniel Jones, who is not going to be cheap, even with the injury, will take up a huge chunk of the team's salary cap, and that might force some really tough cuts somewhere else. For example, the Colts could save a massive $24 million against the cap by releasing their veteran receiver, Michael Pittman Jr. So, do you prioritize your new quarterback, even if it means sacrificing one of his best weapons just to afford him? These are the brutal, interconnected decisions that make or break a franchise.
The stakes here could not possibly be any higher. If the Colts officially pull the plug on Anthony Richardson, if they trade him for pennies on the dollar or just cut him outright, that draft pick will forever be remembered as this: the zenith of mistakes made by the franchise. It would be a public, unavoidable admission of a catastrophic failure in evaluating talent at the most important position in all of sports, a blunder of truly historic proportions.
And so that leaves us with this one question. It's the only question that matters in Indianapolis right now. Do you cut your losses on a historic draft bust, admit that you got it horribly wrong, and just try to salvage whatever you can? Or do you bet on the hope you saw last season and risk building your entire franchise around a free agent quarterback who's coming off one of the most devastating injuries in football? There is no safe play here. Both paths are absolutely loaded with risk. In the end, there is just no easy answer. The Colts are well and truly trapped between a rock and a hard place. One path forces them to publicly admit to a massive franchise-defining failure. The other path requires them to make an enormous bet on a fragile comeback story. The decision they make is going to set the course for this team for the next decade. Thanks for watching this explainer on NFL Nexus. So what do you think the Colts should do? Let me know your takedown in the comments below. And hey, if you're looking for a great gift for the kids, or even for yourself, check out our coloring books through the link in the description. We'll see you next time.